What would you do if you traveled thousands of miles with your children to marry a man you'd never met, only to discover he'd died before you arrived? And what if his rough, dangerous brother, a man nothing like the gentle farmer you'd expected, offered to take his place? Hit that like button for stories of second chances and unexpected love, and subscribe to follow more Western romance tales where fate has different plans than we expect. Widow travels 2,000 miles to marry farmer, but he's dead, and his outlaw brother changes everything. The Texas heat hit Margaret O'Connell like a physical blow as she stepped off the train at Sweetwater Station, her two children clinging to her skirts. 8-year-old Annie held her cloth doll with white knuckles, while 5-year-old Timothy pressed his face against his mother's leg, overwhelmed by the noise and dust of this alien world. Boston felt like another lifetime, though they'd left only 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks of trains, stages, and endless prairie that had drained their meager funds and tested their endurance. But it would be worth it. James McCrae's letters had promised safety, stability, a new beginning. A farm outside Sweetwater, he'd said. Nothing fancy but productive. A good life for her and the children. Margaret scanned the platform looking for a kind-faced man matching James's description from his single photograph. Tall, lean, with gentle eyes and a shy smile. He'd seemed safe in that image, nothing like Patrick had been before the drink took him completely. "Mama, where is he?" Annie asked, her voice small. "He'll be here, sweetheart. Perhaps he's delayed." But as the platform emptied and the sun climbed higher, Margaret's certainty wavered. She approached the station master, a grizzled man, who looked at her with something like pity. "Excuse me, sir. I'm looking for James McCrae. He was supposed to meet me." The man's expression shifted to outright sympathy. "Ma'am, I'm real sorry to be the one to tell you this. James McCrae passed on near 2 weeks ago. Fever took him sudden-like." The world tilted. Margaret gripped the counter, her vision blurring. That's not possible. I received a letter from him just before we left." "Mail takes time, ma'am. He probably sent it before he took sick." "Mama?" Timothy's voice was frightened. Margaret forced herself to breathe, to think. They had 43 cents to their name. No tickets back to Boston, and nothing to return to anyway. She'd sold everything, burned every bridge to make this journey. Is there family? Someone I could speak with?" The station master scratched his beard. "Well, now there's his brother Cole, but ma'am, Cole McCrae he ain't like James was." Before Margaret could ask what that meant, the door banged open. A man filled the doorway. No, not just a man, a force of nature. Where James had been lean in his photograph, this man was broad, powerful. Where James had gentle eyes, this man's were hard as flint, the color of winter sky. Dark hair fell past his collar, and several days' worth of stubble shadowed a jaw that could have been carved from granite. He wore 2 guns tied low and moved with the controlled grace of someone accustomed to violence. This was not a farmer. This was something else entirely. "Mrs. O'Connell," his voice was deep, rougher than whiskey and smoke. Margaret straightened, pulling her children closer. "Yes, and you are Cole McCrae, James's brother." He removed his hat, revealing a scar that ran through his left eyebrow. "I apologize for not meeting you sooner. I was dealing with some business. The station master just informed me that James that he's dead. Yes. No softening, no gentle delivery. Just fact. Fever took him 12 days ago. I buried him in the farm." Annie started crying. Timothy buried his face deeper in Margaret's skirts. Margaret herself wanted to collapse, to give in to the despair threatening to overwhelm her, but she couldn't. Not here, not in front of the children. "I see," she managed. "Then we'll need to make other arrangements. If you could perhaps direct us to a boarding house." With what money, Cole's assessment was quick, taking in their worn clothes the single battered trunk that contained everything they owned. "Look, Mrs. O'Connell, I know this isn't what you expected. James wrote me about your arrangement. You needed a husband and father for your kids. He needed help with the farm and companionship. That arrangement died with your brother, Mr. McCrae. Maybe, maybe not." Cole studied her with those hard eyes. "The farm still needs tending. Your children still need providing for. You still need a safe place." Margaret stared at him. "What are you suggesting?" "Same arrangement, different brother." "You cannot be serious." "Deadly serious." He glanced at the children. Look, I'm not my brother. James was the good one. Gentle, patient, all those things he probably told you in his letters. Me, I'm none of that. But I know duty. James wanted to take care of you and yours. He can't. I can. You don't even know us. I know enough. Widow from Boston, 2 kids desperate enough to answer a stranger's advertisement for marriage. James showed me your letters. You write well, seem educated. You were honest about your situation. That counts for something. The station master cleared his throat. Ma'am, if I might, Cole's rough around the edges, but he's solid. Keeps his word. That's more than most men can say. Margaret looked at this dangerous stranger who was offering salvation with the same casual tone one might discuss the weather. Then she looked at her children, exhausted, frightened, far from anything familiar. Mr. McCrae, I cannot simply transfer my agreement with your brother to you as if it were a business contract. Can't you? Cole's expression didn't change. Seems to me that's exactly what it was. Marriage for security. James could offer it now, he can't. I can. Only difference is I'm not going to pretend it's something it's not. His bluntness should have offended her. Instead, it was oddly refreshing after years of Patrick's honeyed lies. The children. I'm not good with kids, Cole admitted, but I won't hurt them, won't raise a hand to them or you. That's a promise. Mama, I'm tired, Timothy whimpered. Margaret made a decision that would have horrified her Boston society friends had she any left. Mr. McCrae, might we continue this discussion at the farm? The children need rest and food. Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Surprise, maybe. Sure, wagons outside. The ride to the farm took 2 hours through countryside that was nothing like Boston. Vast open with sky that seemed to go on forever. Cole drove in silence while Margaret held her children in the wagon bed. Annie kept sneaking glances at him, fascination mixing with fear. The farm, when it came into view, was modest but well-maintained. A 2-story house with a wide porch, a large barn, several outbuildings. Gardens that showed care despite the recent tragedy. This had been James's pride, she could tell. It's pretty, Mama, Annie said softly. Cole pulled up to the house. James's room is upstairs, first door. You and the children can rest there. I'll bring water for washing. The room was simple but clean. A double bed with a handmade quilt, a dresser, a small desk where James must have written his letters. Margaret found them in the drawer, her letters to him tied with string worn from reading. He kept them, she murmured. He read them every night, Cole said from the doorway. He set down a pitcher and basin. Talked about you constantly, the widow from Boston, with 2 kids who needed a chance. He was excited. And you? What were you? Skeptical. Still am. He turned to go, then paused. There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself. We'll talk after the children are settled. Margaret washed the travel dust from the children, fed them bread and preserves she found in the kitchen, and put them to bed in James's room. They fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the journey and emotions. She found Cole on the porch watching the sunset paint the land in shades of gold and crimson. He'd cleaned up, shaved, though it didn't soften his dangerous edges. Tell me about yourself, Margaret said, sitting in the other chair. If I'm to consider your proposal, I need to know who you are. Cole was quiet for a moment. Not much to tell. James and I grew up here. Parents died when we were young. James stayed, worked the farm. I left. And did what? Whatever paid. His tone suggested those things weren't always legal. Are you an outlaw, Mr. McCrae? I've been called worse. He looked at her. I've done things I'm not proud of. Killed men, though, always in fair fights. Rode with some rough crowds. But I'm done with that life. Came back 6 months ago to help up James with the farm. Why? He asked. James never asked me for anything. So when he wrote saying he needed help, I came. And now he's gone. Now he's gone. Cole pulled out a flask, took a drink, offered it to her. Surprising herself, she accepted it. The whiskey burned, but it helped steady her nerves. Your husband, Cole said. How'd he die? Dock accident. Or so they said. Truth is, he was drunk, fell into the harbor. Margaret's voice was bitter. Patrick O'Connell was charming when sober, a devil when drunk, which was most of the time by the end. He hit you. The question was casual, but something in Cole's tone made her look at him. Sometimes. The children, never. I wouldn't have stayed if he'd touched them. Cole nodded, accepting this. I don't hit women or children. Ever. No matter what. That's a low bar for marriage, Mr. McCrae. Maybe, but it's apparently one your first husband couldn't clear. He took another drink. Look, Mrs. O'Connell. Margaret. Margaret, I'm not trying to replace James. I know what I am and what I'm not. I'm not gentle or patient. I don't know poetry or pretty words. I'm not what you came here for. What are you then? Oh, Cole considered. I'm practical. I work hard. I keep my word. The farm needs running and I need help. You need a home and protection for your kids. It's a business arrangement, nothing more. And if I say no, then I'll take you back to town tomorrow, give you what money I can spare for tickets somewhere else. Margaret studied this hard man who was offering her a lifeline with all the romance of a cattle auction. Yet there was something about his directness, his lack of pretense, that she found oddly comforting. I need the night to think about it. Fair enough. Cole stood. I'll be in the barn if you need anything. You don't sleep in the house. Not while you're here unmarried. Whatever else I am, I respect propriety that much. That night, Margaret lay in James's bed, staring at the ceiling, weighing impossible choices. Stay and marry a dangerous stranger, or leave with no money and nowhere to go. She pulled out James's letters, reading them by lamplight. He'd seemed so kind, so eager for family. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Annie stood in the doorway. Can't sleep, sweetheart. Annie climbed into bed with her. Mama's the scary man going to be our new papa. He's offered to take care of us, yes. He looks mean. He looks tired, Margaret corrected, though she understood Annie's fear. Will he be like Papa was when he was angry? Margaret's heart broke a little. No, sweetheart, he promised he wouldn't hurt us. Papa promised too sometimes. True, Patrick had been full of promises, broken as easily as they were made. But something about Cole McCrae suggested that his word once given was iron. The next morning, Margaret woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She found Cole in the kitchen cooking breakfast with surprising competence. The children were already at the table watching him with wide eyes. Morning, he said without turning. Coffee's ready. Margaret poured herself a cup, noting how he moved around the kitchen. Not comfortable exactly, but familiar. You cook? Had to learn. James was terrible at it. He set plates in front of the children. Eat up. Timothy picked up his fork, then looked at Cole. Mister, are you a bad man? Margaret started to scold him, but Cole held up a hand. Sometimes, he told the boy honestly. But not to you or your mama. Never to you. Promise, promise. Timothy nodded and began eating. Annie remained wary, but she ate too. After breakfast, Cole showed them around the farm. 40 acres mostly planted with corn and wheat, a vegetable garden that needed tending. Chickens, 2 milk cows, a few horses. James was planning to expand, Cole explained. Had ideas about bringing in cattle. But farming, he shrugged, it's not what I know best. What do you know best? Margaret asked. Horses, cattle, things that move, not things that grow. Then why stay? Because James loved this place. Seemed wrong to let it die with him. That afternoon, while the children napped, Margaret made her decision. She found Cole repairing a fence, his shirt off, in the heat, revealing a body marked by violence, scars from bullets, knives, things she didn't want to imagine. I have conditions, she said without preamble. He straightened, reaching for his shirt. Let's hear them. First, separate bedrooms. This is a business arrangement, as you said. Agreed. Second, you will not drink to excess around the children. I'm not a drunk, Margaret. I drink, but I know my limits. Third, the children's education continues. They need schooling. There's a school in town. 8 miles, but I can take them. And fourth, she paused, gathering courage. If this arrangement becomes untenable for either of us, we part ways civilly. No violence, no drama. You help us leave safely. Cole studied her. You're expecting me to become your first husband. I'm being practical, as you suggested. Fair enough. I have conditions too. Margaret raised an eyebrow, waiting. You run the house, I run the farm. No interference unless asked. You don't try to change me or civilize me. And if trouble comes, and it might given my past, you trust me to handle it. What kind of trouble? The kind that comes with a reputation. Margaret considered. She was trading unknown dangers for known shelter. Agreed. They were married 3 days later by the circuit judge who happened to be passing through. The ceremony was brief, witnessed by the ranch foreman from the neighboring property and his wife. Cole wore his cleanest shirt, but still looked dangerous. Margaret wore her best dress, carefully preserved from Boston. "You may kiss your bride," the judge said. Cole leaned in his lips, barely brushing hers. It was nothing like Patrick's demanding kisses, nor the gentle touch she'd imagined from James. It was careful, respectful, and surprisingly warm. That evening, after the children were asleep, Cole and Margaret sat on the porch. He'd moved his things into the downstairs bedroom, leaving the upstairs to her and the children. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For offering this. You didn't have to. James would have haunted me if I'd let you leave with nowhere to go. Is that the only reason Cole was quiet for a moment. "No, maybe I'm tired of being alone. Maybe I figured it was time to try being something other than what I've been." "And what have you been?" "A weapon, mostly. Point me at a problem, I'd solve it, usually with violence. But James always believed I could be more. Maybe this is a way to prove him right. Or wrong." "Or wrong," he agreed. The first weeks were awkward, two strangers learning to share space. Cole was up before dawn working the farm with an intensity that suggested he was fighting something internal. Margaret managed the house, established routines, tried to create normalcy for the children. Timothy warmed to Cole first, following him around the farm despite Cole's initial discomfort. The boy was fascinated by this dangerous man who handled horses like they were extensions of himself, who could fix anything, who never raised his voice, even when frustrated. Annie took longer, watching from safe distances. The breakthrough came when she found Cole in the barn one evening treating a wounded stray dog. "Is he hurt bad?" she asked from the doorway. Cole corrected. "And yes, someone shot her, probably thought she was a coyote." "Will she die?" "Not if I can help it." Annie crept closer. "Can I help?" Cole glanced at her, this child who'd been terrified of him weeks ago. "Sure. Hold her head, talk to her. Gentle-like." As Annie whispered to the dog, Cole worked with surprising gentleness, cleaning and binding the wound. When he finished, the dog licked his hand. "You're good at fixing things," Annie observed. "Better at breaking them, usually. Mama says people can change." "Your mama's an optimist." "What's that mean?" "Means she believes in things that might not be true." Annie considered this. "I think you're changing. You're less scary now." "Still scary, though." "A little, but the good kind of scary, like a guard dog." Cole almost smiled. "That's the nicest thing anyone said about me in years, kid." From that night on, Annie included Cole in her bedtime prayers as right after her mother and brother. Margaret, listening from the hallway, felt something shift in her chest. The test of their arrangement came 6 weeks after the wedding. Margaret was in town with the children buying supplies when 3 men on horseback surrounded their wagon. Rough men, trail-worn and dangerous. "Well, well, you must be Cole McCrae's new woman," the leader said, his smile predatory. "Pretty thing like you wasted on a killer like him." "Please let us pass," Margaret said, her voice steady despite her fear. "Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. Maybe you should come have a drink with us. Get to know us better." The lady said let her pass. Cole's voice came from behind them. He stood in the street, coat pushed back to reveal both guns, his stance deceptively casual. "McCrae," the leader said. "Heard you'd gone soft playing farmer." "Heard wrong." Cole's voice was different than Margaret had ever heard it. Cold, deadly. "That's my wife and children. You'll move aside. Now." 3 against 1, Cole. "You might be fast, but you're not that fast." "Want to find out." The tension stretched taut. Timothy whimpered. Annie hid her face in Margaret's shoulder. Then Cole smiled, and it was terrifying. "Tell you what, Jenkins. You can ride away now, vertical, or leave town horizontal. Your choice." Jenkins laughed nervously. "You always were crazy, McCrae. And you always were a coward. What's it gonna be?" For a moment, violence seemed inevitable. Then Jenkins backed his horse up. "Not worth it. Come on, boys." They rode away, but not before Jenkins called back. "This isn't over, McCrae." "It never is," Cole muttered. He approached the wagon, his dangerous edge fading as he looked at the frightened children. "You okay?" Margaret nodded, though her hands shook. "Who were they?" "Old acquaintances. The kind I was hoping to avoid. Will they come back? Probably. Cole lifted Timothy from the wagon, the boy clinging to him. But not today, let's go home. That night, after the children were asleep, Margaret found Cole cleaning his guns at the kitchen table. You would have killed them, she said. Yes. All three, or died trying. For us, Cole looked up. You're mine to protect now. That's what marriage means to me. We're not really. I mean, this isn't a real marriage. Isn't it? Cole's gray eyes held hers. We live together, work together, raise children together. Seems real enough to me. Margaret felt heat rise in her cheeks. You know what I mean. I do, but Margaret, fake or not, you're under my protection. Those are my kids now, legally speaking. Anyone threatens you, they deal with me. I didn't ask for a gunfighter. No, you asked for James. You got me instead. I can't be him, but I can keep you safe. That's something. It is, she admitted. Thank you. The seasons turned. Summer gave way to autumn, and Cole proved himself capable of more than violence. He was a hard worker up before dawn, never complaining. He fixed things Margaret didn't even know were broken. He taught Timothy to ride patiently, working with the boys' fear of horses. He built Annie a dollhouse, spending evening after evening carving tiny furniture. And slowly, carefully, he and Margaret built something resembling friendship. They talked in the evenings after the children slept, sharing stories. Cole told her about growing up wild after their parents died, about James trying to civilize him. Margaret told him about Boston society, about the slow decline of her marriage, about the courage it took to answer James's advertisement. Do you miss it? Cole asked one evening. Boston. I miss the idea of it, the safety I thought I had, but it was an illusion. Patrick's drinking, the debts, the shame. This is better. This married to a gunfighter on a farm in the middle of nowhere. Married to an honest man who keeps his word, she corrected. That's worth more than all of Boston society. Cole looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone fragile, helpless. Instead, he paused, searching for words. You're still wrapped in silk. It was the closest to poetry she'd ever heard from him. Winter brought challenges. A blizzard trapped them in the house for 3 days. Cole taught the children card games while Margaret read to them. They played charades, Cole surprising everyone with his terrible but enthusiastic acting. For those 3 days, they felt like a real family. But the past has a way of catching up. Jenkins returned in spring, this time with more men. Margaret woke to find Cole strapping on his guns in the pre-dawn darkness. Stay inside, he ordered. Keep the children upstairs. No matter what you hear, don't come out. Cole, he grabbed her shoulders, his gray eyes intense. Promise me, Margaret, whatever happens, you stay safe. You're scaring me. Good. Be scared. Be smart. There's money hidden in the barn, third stall under the hay. If something happens to me, take it and run. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her, then hard and desperate, nothing like their wedding kiss. Then he was gone. Margaret huddled with the children in her bedroom, listening to voices outside, then gunshots. So many gunshots. Timothy cried silently while Annie held her doll with white knuckles. Is Cole gonna die, Mama? Annie whispered. No, Margaret said firmly, though her heart raced with terror. No, he's too stubborn to die. The gunfire stopped. Silence stretched unbearable. Then footsteps on the stairs. Margaret grabbed the shotgun Cole had taught her to use, standing between the door and her children. The door opened. Cole stood there, blood on his shirt, but standing. It's done, he said, then collapsed. Cole's wound wasn't fatal, but it was serious. The bullet had torn through his left shoulder, missing anything vital, but leaving damage that would take time to heal. Margaret worked with the efficiency of someone who'd seen too much violence, cleaning and binding the wound, while Cole drifted in and out of consciousness. 5 men, he muttered at one point. Jenkins won't be coming back. Shh, rest. The children. Safe, you kept us safe. For 3 days, Cole burned with fever. Margaret never left his side, cooling him with wet cloths, forcing water between his lips. The children helped Annie, reading to him from her fairy tale book, Timothy, bringing fresh water without being asked. On the 3rd night, the fever broke. Cole opened clear eyes to find Margaret asleep in the chair beside his bed, her hand holding his. He studied her face in the lamplight, the worry lines, the exhaustion, the surprising beauty he'd been trying not to notice for months. She stirred, eyes opening to meet his. "You're awake." Disappointed. Relieved. She checked his forehead. Fever's gone. The bodies. Sheriff Hartley took care of it, said it was self-defense, clear-cut. Jenkins had a warrant out for murder in Kansas. Good. Cole tried to sit up, grimaced. The farm is fine. The Andersons have been helping. Tom's been tending the animals. Tom Anderson's sweet on you. Margaret colored slightly. Don't be ridiculous. He has been since you arrived. Can't blame him. Cole McCrae, are you jealous? Do I have a right to be? The question hung between them, loaded with months of unspoken feelings. You're my husband, Margaret said quietly. In name only, that was the agreement. Agreements can change. Cole studied her. What are you saying, Margaret? She took a breath, gathering courage she didn't know she had. I'm saying that somewhere between you offering to marry me at the train station and you almost dying to protect us, I fell in love with you. Cole was silent for so long, Margaret thought he might have drifted back to sleep. Then you came here for James, for safety and kindness. I found something better. A gunfighter with blood on his hands. A man who builds dollhouses and teaches my son to ride. Who saves wounded dogs and faces down 5 men to protect his family. Who's gentle when no one's watching and fierce when we need protection. Margaret, I know what you've been. I don't care. I care about who you are now with us. Cole reached up with his good hand cupping her face. I'm not good with words, Margaret. But you and those kids, you've given me something I never thought I'd have. A reason to be better. Is that love? It's as close as I've ever come to it. Margaret leaned down and kissed him, soft and sure. When they parted, Cole was smiling, a real smile that transformed his harsh features. So what now, he asked. Now you heal. Then we figure out how to be really married instead of just pretending. The children? Love you. Timothy wants to be just like you when he grows up. Annie tells everyone at school that her papa is the bravest man in Texas. I'm not their papa. Aren't you? Cole considered. In every way that mattered, he'd become their father. He'd protected them, provided for them, taught them, even tucked them in when Margaret was busy. Somewhere along the way, they'd become his. Maybe I am, he admitted. Recovery was slow. Cole chafed at the restriction, but Margaret was firm. No heavy work until he was fully healed. He spent the time teaching Timothy to whittle, helping Annie with her letters, and watching Margaret work around the farm with new appreciation. You're tougher than you look, he told her one evening as she came in from feeding the chickens. I had a good teacher. James, you showed me that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about doing what needs doing despite the fear. Philosophy from a gunfighter. Wisdom from my husband. The word husband carried new weight now, promise instead of pretense. Tom Anderson did come calling once Cole was up and about, ostensibly to check on the farm, but really to see Margaret. Cole watched from the porch, amused as Margaret politely but firmly sent him on his way. Poor Tom, Cole said as the man rode away, shot down in flames. He's a nice man, but he's not. Margaret paused. Not what? Not you. Cole pulled her onto his lap, ignoring the twinge in his shoulder. Mrs. McCrae, are you saying you prefer dangerous men? I'm saying I prefer my man. Yours, huh? Mine. They were interrupted by Annie and Timothy running up excited about a nest they'd found. Family life resumed its rhythm, but with a new warmth, a deeper connection. The town noticed the change. Where before they'd whispered about Cole McCrae taking his brother's bride, now they saw a real couple, a true family. Cole smiled more, his dangerous edges softening around his wife and children. Margaret bloomed no longer the frightened widow from Boston, but a frontier woman strong and capable. Summer brought unexpected visitors. A well-dressed couple arrived in an expensive carriage looking entirely out of place. Margaret recognized them immediately. Her late husband's parents, the O'Connells from Boston. Margaret, Mrs. O'Connell said coldly, we've come for our grandchildren. Cole stepped out, and even in simple farm clothes, his presence was imposing. I don't believe we've met. This doesn't concern you, Mr. O'Connell said dismissively. We're here on family business. This is my husband, Cole McCrae, Margaret said firmly. Anything concerning my children concerns him. Mrs. O'Connell looked at Cole with obvious disdain. We heard you'd remarried some farmer in Texas. Really? Margaret, have you no shame? Patrick barely cold in his grave. Patrick died over a year ago, Margaret interrupted, and he was drunk when he died, as you well know. How dare you? How dare you come here after abandoning us when Patrick's debts came due? You knew what he did to us, and you did nothing. Mr. O'Connell puffed up. Regardless, those children have O'Connell blood. They belong with us in proper society, not in this wilderness with some nobody farmer. Cole laughed, a sound that made both O'Connells step back. Nobody farmer. I like that. Cole, Margaret warned. No, let them talk. It's amusing. Cole's gray eyes had gone cold. You want to take my children? They're not your children, Mrs. O'Connell snapped. You're not their father. Aren't I? Cole called out. Annie, Timothy, come here. The children ran over Timothy, immediately going to Cole, who lifted him despite his healing shoulder. Annie pressed against his other side. These people say they're your grandparents, Cole said calmly. They want you to go with them to Boston. No, Timothy buried his face in Cole's neck. I want to stay with you and Mama. Annie looked at the O'Connells with eyes too knowing for her age. You never wanted us before. Papa used to write to you asking for help. You never answered. Mrs. O'Connell had the grace to look uncomfortable. Things are different now. We can provide properly for you. We have everything we need, Annie said firmly. We have Mama and Cole. We have our home. Cole's our papa now, Timothy added, his voice muffled against Cole's shirt. He protects us. Mr. O'Connell tried once more. You can't seriously intend to leave them with this man. We've made inquiries. He's a gunfighter, a killer. He's my husband, Margaret said simply, and a better father than Patrick ever was. We'll take this to court. Try it, Cole said quietly. I've got friends too, judges who remember when I helped clean up their towns, rangers who owe me favors. You want a legal fight, we'll give you one. The threat was delivered calmly, but the O'Connells understood. This wasn't some simple farmer they could intimidate. This isn't over, Mr. O'Connell blustered. Yes, it is, Margaret said. You had your chance to be grandparents. You chose your reputation over your grandchildren. Now leave and don't come back. After they left, the family stood together, Timothy still in Cole's arms, as Annie holding Margaret's hand. They won't really take us, will they? Annie asked. No, sweetheart. Never, Cole said firmly. You're ours, both of you, forever. That night, after the children were asleep, Margaret found Cole sitting on the porch staring at the stars. Thank you, she said, sitting beside him. For what? For claiming them, for being willing to fight for them. They're mine to fight for, have been since. He paused. Hell, probably since Timothy first followed me to the barn. And me, am I yours to fight for too? Cole pulled her close. You've been mine since you stepped off that train, Margaret McCrae. Just took me a while to admit it. I wasn't supposed to be yours. I was supposed to be James's. Maybe, or maybe you were always meant to be mine and James was just the way to get you here. Cole kissed her temple. I'm sorry you didn't get the gentle farmer you were promised. I'm not. Margaret turned to face him. I got something better. I got a man who would face down 5 gunmen for his family, who builds dollhouses and teaches boys to ride and saves wounded dogs, who changed his whole life for a woman and 2 children he didn't even know. You changed me, Margaret. We changed each other. They sat in comfortable silence, then Margaret said, I want more children. Your children. Cole's breath caught. Margaret, I know we didn't discuss it, but yes, the word came out rough. Yes to anything you want. Everything you want. A year later, Margaret gave birth to James Cole McCrae, named for the brother who'd brought them together and the man who'd made them a family. Annie and Timothy doted on their baby brother, and Cole discovered he could be gentle with something so small and fragile. You're a natural, Margaret told him as he rocked the baby to sleep. Never thought I'd be a father. Real father, I mean. You've been a real father since the day you stood between those men and our wagon in town. Our wagon, our family, I like the sound of that. The farm prospered, though Cole gradually shifted from crops to cattle, playing to his strengths. He hired help good men who respected him despite, or perhaps because of, his reputation. The violence of his past became a shield protecting their peaceful present. 5 years after Margaret stepped off that train, they stood in the same spot waiting for another arrival. Elizabeth Mason, a young widow, answering an advertisement from Tom Anderson, who'd finally decided to find his own mail-order bride. "Think it'll work out?" Margaret asked. "Worked for us. We weren't exactly typical." Cole laughed. "No, we were a disaster. Wrong brother, dangerous, past business arrangement that became love. The best kind of disaster." "A blessing in disguise," Cole agreed, using the phrase Margaret often used about their unconventional beginning. As the train pulled in and a nervous young woman stepped off, Margaret squeezed Cole's hand. They'd come so far from that desperate moment when she'd arrived to find James dead and hope seemingly lost. "No regrets?" Cole asked. "Only one." "What's that?" "That James never got to see how perfect we are together." Cole was quiet then. "He knows. Somehow I think he knows." That evening, as their family gathered for dinner, Annie helping Margaret with the meal, Timothy entertaining baby James, Cole carving the roast, Margaret looked around the table and marveled at how wrong turns could lead to right destinations. She'd traveled 2,000 miles to marry a gentle farmer only to find him dead. But in his rough, dangerous brother, she'd found something she never expected. A love worth fighting for, a man who'd reshape himself for family, a blessing wearing the disguise of disaster. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked, catching her contemplative mood. "How grateful I am that you were at the station that day. Instead of James, instead of anyone else in the world." Cole raised his glass of water. He rarely drank anymore, keeping his promise about excess. "To wrong trains, dead brothers, and blessings in disguise." Margaret laughed, raising her own glass. "To second chances and unexpected love." "To family," Annie added, old enough now to understand their story. "To Papa Cole," Timothy shouted, making everyone laugh. As the Texas sun set over their land, painting the sky in shades of gold, and Rose, the McCrae family ate and talked and laughed, living proof that sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances and the greatest blessings arrive in the most unlikely disguises. Years later, when Annie married and Timothy took over the ranch, when Cole's hair had gone gray, and Margaret's face showed the lines of a life well lived, they would still sit on that porch where they'd first negotiated their practical arrangement. "Did you ever wonder what would have happened if James had lived?" Margaret asked one evening. "Every day for the first year," Cole admitted. "Then I stopped." "Why, putin?" "Because I realized it didn't matter. This is what happened. You're what happened. And I wouldn't change a single moment that led us here." Margaret leaned into him, this dangerous man who'd become her safe harbor. "Neither would I." And in the Texas twilight, with their grandchildren playing in the yard and their children building their own lives, Cole and Margaret McCrae sat together, proof that love finds a way even through loss, even through lies, even through the most unlikely circumstances. A blessing in disguise, indeed.